Hi everyone, welcome. If you're just joining us, go ahead and get settled in, but we'll get things kicked off. My name is Amaya Stecker. I am with the Resource Development Department at National PTA. Welcome to our Learning Lab, sponsored by the American Cleaning Institute. I'll turn things over to Brian Sansoni here momentarily for introductions, but first a few housekeeping announcements just for your general awareness. National PTA works with sponsors for these learning labs. All learning labs are sponsored sessions, and National PTA does not endorse any commercial entity, product, nor service. No endorsement of sponsored companies is implied. National PTA is also a professional, not-for-profit association committed to providing valuable and safe experiences. National PTA is dedicated to equal opportunity and treatment for all of its members, attendees, staff, service providers. Attendees are expected to be respectful to other attendees, National PTA, and service providers. National PTA reserves the right to remove or refuse access to any attendee, sponsor, representative, or vendor who has registered or gained access under false pretenses, provided false information, or for any other reason whatsoever that we deem is the cause under the circumstances. Thank you for allowing me those moments. Brian, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you for today's Learning Lab.
Thank you, Maya, very much. I'm Brian Sansoni. I'm the Senior Vice President for Communications, Outreach, and Membership at the American Cleaning Institute based in Washington, D.C. And we represent the manufacturers of cleaning products and the chemistries that make them work. And we are thrilled to be working with the National PTA to have a very important conversation about a topic that's first and foremost for so many of our communities and schools, and that's hygiene and cleanliness in those schools. School districts across the country are at various different stages of operation, whether it's completely virtual to part-time in-school attendance, and in some cases, students are attending full-time. So no matter what, where your community is at in the planning stages or in current operation, we certainly realize, as we're still addressing the pandemic, that hygiene and cleaning need to be front and center. And so we are fortunate to have with us today to help us in sharing some conversations and some great information for parents, teachers, and the school communities at large, two experts in their fields. I want to welcome Liz Clark. She's the Nursing Education and Practice Specialist at the National Association of School Nurses. Liz has over 25 years of experience as a school nurse and in school health services administration, and she's currently the project lead for COVID-19 work at the National Association of School Nurses. Also joining us today is Dr. James Arbogast. Jim is Vice President of Hygiene Services and Public Health Advancement at Gojo Industries. He's been there since 2002 and has had various technical leadership roles in skincare science, product development, and new technology. And again, over a quarter century of experience in consumer product development, and again, with a major focus on skincare and hand hygiene. I will just note at the beginning here, attendees can submit questions using the Q&A feature. Should be at the bottom of your screen, and we'll look to try to get to a few of those later in our webcast. And we also want to welcome those joining on demand as well. So let's start with you, Liz Clark, with the National Association of School Nurses. School nurses are always on the front lines of school health. And this year has been no doubt extraordinarily challenging. So Liz, I just wonder if you can maybe take a couple of minutes to share with us on, I think the challenges school nurses are facing, and maybe a few ideas on how we can help your community.
Great. Thank you so much, Brian. I appreciate being here. Good afternoon to everyone. And I really would like to thank the American Cleaning Institute and the National PTA for allowing us to do this presentation today. I do have a few slides, so I'm going to go ahead and share those. Take me a second here. So, I would like to, just bring out that hand washing was practiced in medieval times upon awakening in the morning, as well as before and after eating. So, hand washing is not a new practice. People during this time understood that there was a relationship between dirt and illness, and the concept of germs came about during the 19th century from scientists such as Louis Pasteur and Joseph Lister and others. And nurses, such as Florence Nightingale, implemented hand washing practices which greatly reduced infection and saved lives. And most of us were taught hand washing techniques by our parents, grandparents, teachers, and school nurses. And being a school nurse, of course, I needed to add this important group of hand washing experts. As a practicing school nurse, I taught hand washing to preschool and elementary students every school year. I also teach community health nursing clinicals at a local university. And this past spring, a high school teacher, social studies teacher, requested that one of my student nurses teach hand washing to her students as they were studying the plague. And this was actually prior to the COVID-19 pandemic starting. And as parents, you are now the experts in hand washing training and evaluation in your own homes. So I'm going to review the hand washing basics and highlight some common misconceptions. So if you look at this poster on hand washing, it's pretty basic, right? You're going to wet your hands, you're going to get some soap, you're going to scrub your hands, you'll rinse them, and you'll dry them. So, it's pretty simple. But there's some steps here that we do want to make sure that we highlight. We want to make sure we're going to scrub all the surfaces of our hands, your wrists, between your fingers, and your fingernails, under your fingernails for at least 20 seconds. And you want to make sure that your children are not just washing the palm side of their hands, which is very common. The water can be cold or warm. Warm is preferred. And it is the friction from scrubbing, not the heat of the water, that cleans the hands. Hot water is not recommended due to the risk of burns, and hot water causes the protective layer of the skin to deteriorate with repeat washing. And this can cause redness, dryness, cracks, itching, and pain. If your children complain of itchy, painful hands, you can try applying lotion after they wash their hands and cooling the water during the hand washing procedure. Next, it is really important to turn off the faucet with a paper towel. Touching the faucet is considered making the hands dirty again because the faucet is not clean. Many schools do have automated faucets or foot pedals to activate the flow of water. At home, of course, you don't have these. If a sink to wash hands is not available, hand sanitizer consisting of at least 60% alcohol may be used. Lastly, dry your hands with a clean cloth towel at home or paper products at school. Many schools have turned off their air dryers due to the concern with increasing the virus spread. As for the 20-second duration for hand washing, I'm sure many of you have already heard to sing the ABC song once or the happy birthday song twice. This is perfectly fine at home. Research does show that singing can increase the spread of the COVID-19 virus. In schools, students may sing wearing their cloth face coverings, or they also use timers or stopwatches to assist them with that 20-second recommendation. During COVID-19, schools have intensified hand washing frequency to more regular intervals, such as directly after arriving at school, every time a transition occurs in instruction, prior to or after touching your face coverings, after coughing or sneezing, and of course, after using the restroom, in addition to the routine times of before eating and after recess. This is a basic reminder poster from the CDC I have on the screen here, and it is translated into 9 different languages and is available for download. There are lots of resources out there and reminders. Reminders are great. So here's another example of the many posters available on the CDC website. There are many different posters to choose from for different levels and developmental abilities of your children. And many schools have already downloaded them and posted them all over the school to help remind students and staff to wash their hands. If you want to access these, you can go to cdc.gov/hand washing and look at the many posters that they have. The National Association of School Nurses, or NASN, developed return to school hygiene videos funded by the CDC on washing hands, wearing cloth face coverings, and staying home when you're sick. The videos are in both English and Spanish. I will show you the video, washing your hands now.
Washing your hands is easy, and it's one of the most effective ways to prevent the spread of germs. Wet your hands with clean running water. It can be warm or cold, and apply soap. Lather your hands by rubbing them together with the soap. Wash the fronts and backs, wrists, between your fingers, and under your nails. Scrub your hands for at least 20 seconds. You can sing the ABC song once, or the Happy Birthday song twice. Rinse your hands well under running water and then dry them with a clean towel, or air dry them. Turn off the faucet with a towel. If soap and water aren't available, use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer that contains at least 60% alcohol. Apply the sanitizer and rub your hands together until they're dry. This should take about 20 seconds. Wash your hands before you eat or touch your face. And after you use the restroom, go outside, blow your nose, cough or sneeze, or touch your face covering. Remember to follow everyday healthy habits. Wear a cloth face covering, stay 6 feet away from others, and stay home if you're sick. If you have any questions, contact your school nurse, working on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic in schools.
Thank you.
All right. Liz, thank you very much for sharing those very useful reminders and resources. And just for the audience, in a few days, you will receive an email, including a link to this broadcast and some additional resources from today's participants. So let me turn it over to Jim Arbogast with Gojo. Jim, again, you've been involved in hand hygiene education for quite a long time now. And again, from your vantage point, we certainly know how critical hygiene and cleaning is in so many settings, especially schools. Any unique challenges that you're seeing, and in your conversations with folks in school settings across the country, what are you talking about, and what are you hearing out there?
Okay, thanks, Brian, and hi everyone. Really excited to be here today. I think early on in the pandemic, we had an extraordinary demand for soap, hand sanitizers, and for surface cleaners and disinfectants. And early on, I know at Gojo, we make Purell. We had to prioritize healthcare facilities, first responders, emergency types of locations. We, and I'm sure all the members of the American Cleaning Institute, have expanded capacity to meet that demand and done everything possible to bring quality products to the market. I'm happy to say that we are now prioritizing K through 12 preschools and colleges and universities right up there with healthcare facilities, and we're able to supply that. So early on, supply was a key thing. Another question we often get is around safety and efficacy. So are the products I'm using safe, and do they really work? And we encourage consumers, decision makers in schools to read the label, understand the label's usually simple, understand the directions. How long does it say a surface should be wet? How much product should be used, whether it's soap or hand sanitizer? What are the safety directions? Some products, believe it or not, say use gloves when you use the surface product. So that would be a bad choice to be using in classrooms, in my opinion. We're going to talk a little bit later about the link between surfaces and hands. We get that question a lot, but there obviously is a connection. Your hands touch surfaces. So I think the number one for me is cleaning your hands at key moments, like right before you eat in the cafeteria is a really key moment. oftentimes students, people in general, whether you're a student, teacher, staff member, parent, you infect yourself by touching your face or not cleaning your hands at those key moments. So that's another key thing. And we're providing hand sanitizer, for instance, at doorways. So when students walk in the building, they should be hand sanitizing. That's a really fast, effective way, fits the flow of the, what they're trying to accomplish in the school, educate the students. And then the last point I would want to make is sometimes we get this question, hey, once this pandemic's over, we're done with flu season, should we stop everything we're doing? And the answer to that is absolutely not. This pandemic has just reminded everyone, or really in many cases educated people on the importance of these what I would call basic practices: cleaning your hands at key moments, cleaning surfaces. If you are sick, stay at home, or at least wear a mask in public. So we're encouraging schools to continue to do this well beyond the pandemic, which hopefully will be over soon. I'll stop there. I could go forever.
Thanks very much, Jim. And we're going to get into an extended conversation with Jim and Liz in a moment here. But we have a few poll questions where we want to ask participants. And so let's go ahead and put up those on the screen. So all the participants are able to, select these. We just have just a couple here initially. So please go ahead and indicate that. I think it's apparent what the questions are. If you could just indicate there, the first one helps identify school age. If you're a parent of a school age child, okay, we'll just give that one in just another couple of maybe 5-10 seconds. All right, and let's go to the second one. Where it's asking about, what you're looking forward to learning from today's panel. You received a good preview from our initial conversations with Liz and Jim, but yeah, what are you interested in hearing about and for us to talk about? And again, we'll also encourage you throughout our broadcast to again submit questions using the Q&A feature at the bottom. And then let's go to the third question. It's about your child's school planning as of the beginning of next year, just kind of based on what you know today. And we certainly can anticipate that might involve a variety of answers depending on where you're coming from. So I'll give you just maybe a few more seconds to submit your answers there, and then we hopefully can revisit some of these a little later on in the broadcast. So, all right. Thank you all for participating, just to give us just a little snapshot on those basic questions. So, all right, let's get into our conversation now as we end the polling, and we will maybe just open it up for a broad conversation. So Liz and Jim, Liz, let me start with you. And again, your members, you represent school nurses from across the country. As we mentioned at the outset, various different situations that school districts are in across the country. What are you hearing and observing as far as the biggest challenges school nurses are facing or may face as schools eventually reopen? And then as a follow-up to that, how can the school community, parents, teachers, help school nurses in what they're trying to do to help keep our school communities healthy and safe?
Wow, sure. I'm happy to answer that question, Brian. I think there are many challenges that school nurses are facing. I think, there are some schools who don't have a school nurse. About 25% of schools across the country do not have a school nurse at all. And about 40% have part-time school nurses, which means they may have 3 to 5 schools or more, and they travel, from school to school. There's only about 40% of schools that have a full-time school nurse every day. And so, it's challenging to reinforce all these mitigation practices and to provide all the essential health services for students. For school nurses, students are the #1 priority, keeping them, healthy and in school. And I think, for parents, really reinforcing the hygiene practices and having them practice them at home. For those, there may be some of you whose students have not been back in school at all yet, who have been on virtual instruction, this entire first semester. And so we're recommending that you have your child wear a face covering at home and practice doing that for longer periods of time so they feel more comfortable. Have them, wash their hands, and, reminders about touching their face, which, children do all the time. We do it as adults too, right? I mean, it's an unconscious thing to, scratch your nose or rub your eye, those sort of things. And then, to really be thinking about those good techniques of hand washing and, finding what works for your child. Every child is different. And so you have to sort of figure out what works. Some kids, like rewards or those sort of things. I know parents have done timers and things at home also to help them. And, that really gets child in the habit of doing those things before they even come to school. And I think the one last thing I will add is, to really learn about the recommendations that your school has. Every school's recommendations are a little bit different, but really keeping children home when they're sick, because so many of common childhood illnesses, strep throat and those colds are the same symptoms that you would see with COVID. And so we do need parents to keep children home if they have any signs of illness at this time, just to be on the safe side.
Thank you, Liz. Jim, turn to you for a second. And we touched upon this a little earlier. Obviously, hand washing, hand hygiene is critical, but you also referenced, the importance of, maintaining, clean and disinfecting surfaces in schools, which is a part of cleaning protocols. Can you maybe shed some light on, again, emphasizing the importance of that? Hand hygiene is there, but keeping clean and disinfecting surfaces is also important.
Yeah, I think the key thing that comes to my mind there is frequently touched surfaces become a priority, and areas where there's a lot of either student interaction or a lot of groups moving together. So cafeterias and classrooms become a priority. Cleaning the tables between cafeteria settings, cleaning desks throughout the day. I know the schools that I've been in the pandemic have increased their frequency of cleaning those surfaces. And I think, the importance is that they can harbor these germs that can get you sick, whether it's the SARS-CoV-2 that's causing the COVID-19 pandemic right now, or many other pathogens that can get you sick. So I'll stop there, Brian.
Well, let me follow up there.
Okay.
Jim, and again, this pandemic's been with us really in the US since March, late February. Any sense from conversations you had, observations you've made, that the cleaning protocols and practices are changing or need to change, because of the challenge posed by the pandemic? So any shifts, subtle or otherwise, that you've noticed or just talked about, with different schools and institutions that you folks work with?
Yeah, I think there's definitely been an increase in the frequency of cleaning. Again, it's what I've observed and what we recommend. Frankly, I think everyone that represents cleaning would recommend clean those surfaces that get touched a lot: cafeteria tables, classroom desks, doorknobs if they're used. Preferably you have doors that you don't have to contact, or no doors in restrooms. So those are very common. Another recommendations, I should say, Brian, and another key thing, I brought it up earlier, but I think it's worth emphasizing: having hand hygiene solutions in key places. So alcohol-based hand sanitizers right at the doorways. And what we're observing is some classes and students and parents are worried about younger children and whether they can clean their own hands with a hand sanitizer. So we're seeing schools with kindergartners, first graders, second graders, where the teachers apply a squirt of the hand sanitizer as they enter the room. And again, then they can just walk to their desk, clean their hands, doesn't slow down the education process. I think a lot of those things are going to stick post-pandemic because of the importance. And schools already, I've heard a couple of schools that are saying that their rates of illness are down. Their rates of absenteeism and absenteeism due to illness are down.
Interesting. Well, that's hopefully good news, a trend that will certainly continue. Liz, let me go back to you and talk maybe a little broader about the school community, because school nurses, schools that have school nurses, obviously they're interacting not just with the students, but the staff, the administration there. Are there any ways, ideas, examples you might be able to share of how folks in those positions, whether it's principals, the teachers, custodial crew, can help you? Because again, you're focused on school health. Any ideas, examples, because you think it takes a whole school community to make hygiene a priority?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that many teachers and school administrators are role models for their students, in hand washing and, safely applying hand sanitizer. There are principals who have stood at entryways and, done the hand sanitizer squirt for their students and, rewarded students for, taking all the right steps. So yeah, I think, that's something that it does take a village for everyone in the school to be doing those things. And many teachers have taken on extra cleaning duties too, within their classrooms to really reinforce that, routine cleaning of frequently touched surfaces. Children touch everything, and their desk space and their supplies and those things. There have been some changes. There used to be community supplies of, crayons and markers and those sort of things. And teachers have, gone out and purchased individual sets for students who can't bring their own in, for those that have returned in person, to really try and reduce that sharing aspect that happens oftentimes in school community sources, and even in gymnasiums, in gyms where there's shared equipment, balls and, other frisbees and whatever sort of PE equipment they're using. Teachers are doing more frequent cleaning of that equipment also. We do not recommend that students do cleaning. I know there are some, especially in other countries, where we've seen some media things where students are cleaning the classrooms and the desks, and that is not appropriate. Cleaning solutions should not be used, around children, and they should not be touching those. So, it is the adults that are taking that role in our schools, and custodial staff. They're going above and beyond, working to provide safe cleaning products, in our schools that will not impact our students with chronic diseases such as asthma and other respiratory things, and keeping the school clean and safe.
We're talking today with Liz Clark with the National Association of School Nurses and Dr. Jim Arbogast with Gojo Industries. Jim, a question for you. I saw a question referred to come in over the Q&A feature. Regarding the use of hand sanitizers. There has been, over the last few months, some news emanating from the Food and Drug Administration where there was some recalls and some warnings about hand sanitizer products. And again, that could, might be confusing or concerning to parents and others in the community. Any, good advice, sense of that on making sure that folks are using the right product?
Yeah, I think I would start with saying that, that was driven by the emergency guidance document that came from the FDA, the US FDA, to make what's called the World Health Organization formulation, which was developed really for developing countries, hospitals in developing countries. So as I mentioned earlier, I think, we're striving to be able to meet all the demand in K through 12 with our Purell products. And our Purell products, and I know members of the American Cleaning Institute take safety very seriously. We're using quality ingredients. We have controls in place to ensure that they're quality, and specifications to ensure that they're not contaminated. What's been most of those products that you mentioned that came through in the chat, the question the FDA, and by the way, FDA has a website where they list the products that are of concern. We could share that later if we want, but most of them have been coming in from other countries where the manufacturing standards maybe aren't quite as solid. So the last thing I would say is try to get the products and brands that you trust. If it's a brand new name that you've never heard of before, and if it's coming out as a thin liquid, that's the World Health Organization formula, which is going to get on the floor and cause problems, not be likable. Try to avoid those and get to the brand names that you know and trust.
Liz, let me turn it back to you a second. We touched upon this a little bit, but obviously parents play a really important role in encouraging good habits at home. Any suggestions maybe on reminders that you might send to parents just to make sure that hand hygiene, hand washing is a habit for kids at home and at school?
I think for parents, sometimes it can be frustrating, depending on your child. Some children love to play in water, and so hand washing can be an activity that might take much longer than 20 seconds. And whether or not you need to monitor your child or not, depending on their age and developmental level. So, I think for parents, I would suggest putting up some posters or reminders and then making it a family activity. It is challenging, especially with the amount of hand washing that we're doing now, and reminding them, anytime they play with the dog or the cat, or they're going to eat, they use the restroom. I mean, some of those habits were already in place, and some need to be reminded and reinforced. And also those frequently touched surfaces at home, your front door that people are coming in and out of, tabletops. Kids are doing virtual instruction, so whatever area they're working in for their schoolwork, cleaning those on a regular basis, really upping things, and doing the best you can. It can be frustrating at times, but we're all in this together, and parents serve that important role of reinforcing what they're doing with their children. And they also have fun soaps, different colors. It doesn't matter. It can be a bar soap at home. It can be a liquid soap or a foam. So mix it up. Make it fun for your kids best you can. If you have an adolescent, they're a whole nother beast, right? Hopefully they're doing what they can, but sometimes our adolescents can be most resistant to things because they're in that sort of it's all about me, and I'm a teenager and I know what's going on. I know more than you as a parent, right? I remember those years with my kids. And so, I think just, being a role model for your kids and being positive about it, and just saying it's something we have to do. I think that's the best advice.
Brian, could I jump in, Brian, and just build on that? I love the idea of role modeling and making it a family activity right at key moments, right before eating is a time where everyone can wash hands. And then Liz reminded me of remote learning. A lot of that learning is happening at home. So clean the computer that's being used, the keyboard, clean those desk areas and the environments that are being used for the education. And that applies again, if the parent does that in front of the student, in front of their child, I should say, which is also a student, they're going to see that they take that seriously and hopefully follow that. And then one thing I would mention at home and in schools is you should not be refilling soap containers. So these soap containers can get contaminated. And especially if you mix different types of soaps, people sometimes assume that every soap's the same and you can mix them all. That's absolutely not true. So try to avoid those refillable containers, both in schools and at home.
Another question about, we're talking about reinforcing good habits, showcasing good habits. A term that we've seen and heard a lot lately is pandemic fatigue. And I, there's a certain level of understanding because we hear the constant streams of warnings, depending where you are, mandates, advice coming down. And, but obviously when it comes to what we're talking about today, hygiene and cleaning, we can't let our guard down. So Jim, let me start with you. Any insights, observations, on ways to perhaps combat that pandemic fatigue, because we can't let our guard down when it comes to hygiene and cleanliness?
Yeah, I think for me, we don't need to be germaphobes. So this is not about cleaning your hands a million times a day and cleaning the surface every time you touch it. Don't touch your face and clean your hands and surfaces at key moments. So if there's hygiene fatigue, it might be because you're just thinking about it and doing it too much. And as Liz said in her beginning, if you do clean your hands too much with soap, one of the biggest scientific challenges we have is making a mild soap. You're trying to remove germs and dirt. It's also can be hard on the skin. So we work very hard on that. If you are cleaning your hands too much, you might be experiencing that. And I wanted to add, Liz mentioned lotion. Right before bed is the best time to put on a hand lotion because it allows it to really soak in and stay on your skin. So if your child or you yourself are experiencing dry skin, that's a great practice. I'm not a fatigue expert, so I'm not gonna I'm not gonna be able to add much more than that, Brian.
Okay. Thanks very much, Jim. So I'm just looking at a few questions coming in from the question and answer set. But okay, so one question has to do, isn't all soap antibacterial and COVID is a virus? Is there any reason to get antibacterial soap? Jim, any perspective you might be able to share on that question?
Yeah, this is a little tricky because of the regulations, not because of the science. So first of all, not all soaps are antibacterial. Put that in quotes. If you make an antibacterial claim in the US, you have to have certain ingredients, and the FDA has rules and regulations around that. Now, I would say scientifically, all soaps, if they're formulated well, they're quality products, they will remove bacteria and viruses, and with a soap, wash them down the drain. In the US, the FDA does not allow skin antiseptics, which is a fancy way of saying hand hygiene products that kill bacteria. They do not allow us, the manufacturers, to claim viral efficacy. So that's why you do not see it on the label. But I would say that you see constantly with leading public health organizations like the CDC are recommending using a hand wash, good soap and water, and then an alcohol-based hand sanitizer with greater than 60% alcohol. And that's been emphasized for a couple of reasons. The science is rock solid on that. Ethanol is an awesome active ingredient, killing a broad spectrum of germs, bacteria, and viruses. It's the gold standards in hospitals and healthcare all around the world. Hand sanitizing happens way more than hand washing in healthcare. That's because the science is really solid. So it works on viruses and bacteria, these hygiene practices. There's just labeling rules and regulations that kind of inhibit some of what's communicated.
Thank you, Jim. Liz, a question for you that I've seen come over here, and this goes back to, I think, some of the statistics you had shared earlier that I think it might be worth restating again. And this is regarding the percentage of schools that have or don't have school nurses. Can you just share those again? Because maybe some of those numbers might have surprised some of our viewers today.
Sure, absolutely. And I'm happy I'll put it in the Q&A response too. 25% of schools across our country do not have a school nurse at all. About 35% have a part-time school nurse, who may have several different schools that she floats around to, maybe in the school one day a week or an hour a week or something like that. And about 40% have a full-time school nurse every day. So those statistics were done from a study that NASN did in 2018, and they're available on our website. And I can put a link to that also in the chat or the Q&A for everyone.
Great. Here's another question that came in. It said, we picnic a lot during the pandemic, or we'll eat in the car just to get out of the house. What about using baby wipes to clean the kids' hands when you're out and about? Is that enough? Jim, I'll direct that to you. I mean, a lot of folks, maybe the little infants will have those around. Can you sufficiently clean hands with those?
If it's all you got, it's better than nothing. I mean, that's definitely, you're going to remove the germs off the germs and soils off of the hands with those baby wipes. It's just a wet wipe, basically. There's not a lot of science about how efficacious those are, Brian. So, you know, it's generally, we would say you're probably getting about a 90% removal, maybe up to 99% removal. An alcohol-based product is going to definitely be, an alcohol-based wipe is definitely going to be more effective than a baby wipe, because you're getting the removal plus that bactericidal, that cidal effect, that killing effect of the alcohol, of the germs on skin. I think that's all I want to respond on that one, Brian.
All right, thanks, Jim. Another question that's come in, I'll direct to Liz, based on, I think, what you just, some of the statistics that you shared, and the questioner mentions that, you know, it sounds like school nurses are kind of under the gun. What can parents do to support school nurses?
Wow, that's a wonderful question. You know, I think, you know, reinforcing the requirements that the school is recommending. If there are questions that parents have, or reaching out to the school nurse to see if there are needs. Sometimes there are a lot of supply needs that school nurses have been missing, PPE and other things because of, you know, a national shortage. Sometimes parent groups, PTAs, are very generous in their, you know, fundraising in their local organizations, and, you know, they could provide funding for supplies and resources that the school nurse may need to support a safe environment. Sometimes it could be even as simple as, you know, being willing to print off those posters for hand washing reminders that, you know, schools are posting around the school. You know, those sort of things are very, very helpful. And so that would be my recommendation for parents or PTA groups, is, you know, just to reach out and ask those questions. You know, is there something I can do, something I can help with that you're really needing?
So as we're getting close to the end of our allotted time, I did want to ask this question. It's a little, you know, future forward. We have a sense, you know, here at American Cleaning Institute, that in the past, you know, it was observationally, it was tough to comprehend that hygiene was a priority always, you know, daily throughout school systems. The pandemic's changed everything. And obviously through our conversation today, clearly we know how important it is. And maybe I'll ask both our panelists this. Jim, we'll start with you. Do you have a sense that what we've gone through and are going through might change that paradigm, that even when we're post-pandemic, everyone's vaccinated, that we can at least maintain a reasonable, important focus on school health, hygiene, and cleaning into the future?
Yeah, I think absolutely. You know, a lot of this behavior change is going to stick. People have learned so much about the importance of this. And I think what a lot of people didn't realize before the pandemic is many, maybe probably most of the infections that affect students, whether it's an E. coli or salmonella or norovirus, anything, they're so preventable. Cleaning your hands at key moments, cleaning surfaces, not touching your face as frequently as you normally do. I think all of that's going to stick, and we're seeing, you know, this realization and commitment to putting the right solutions in the right space. And what I would encourage schools and parents to think about is having what the World Health Organization calls a multimodal strategy. Put the right products, alcohol-based hand sanitizers, soap, surface products, in the right space, train and educate around it, monitor and provide feedback. If a student's not cleaning their hands right before eating, that's a good place to say, hey, you should do that. The WHO calls it reminders in the workplace, posters that kind of remind folks. And then you need to have a culture of safety. Liz mentioned principles, role modeling. the schools I've been in, the students love the principals. It's so funny to see them say, "Hey, Mr. Vitardi, how are you?" So if they're cleaning their hands at key moments and demonstrating good practices, they're gonna affect the students and their other staff members.
Liz, you've been a school nurse for many years, been involved in school health services administration. Do you think we might have an opportunity for some behavior change, after going through this pandemic, and once we get through it, that, maybe we'll turn the corner in ensuring that hygiene is a priority for everyday school life?
Yeah, I definitely think so, or at least I'd like to think so. I think it's a challenge. There's so many moving parts in schools, most of those being children, and children are often reservoirs of all kinds of communicable diseases, unfortunately. But I think so. I mean, this has really reinforced those hygiene practices and cleaning and disinfecting that perhaps people maybe kind of slid through in the past, and now it's really really in the forefront of everything that we do. And as Jim mentioned, schools are really taking it serious, and I think families and parents are as well, because of the seriousness of this virus. And I have heard also that many children aren't displaying the typical childhood diseases. They aren't as common because of these practices that we're seeing, with the hand washing and the face coverings and the social distancing mitigation strategies. So absolutely. So yes, I think, and I'm hoping for the future that this will continue to impact our students so they can remain healthier and stay in school.
Great. We've covered an awful lot of territory in a short amount of time. We have one final poll question that we want to launch, that we would ask all of our participants to answer. So we could bring that up on the screen. And, I think based on the topics that, you heard today, what you'll plan, what kind of practices you'll incorporate, in your life, in your situation. Again, just some initial temperature taking we want to do on this. So we'll keep that up for a few more seconds and give folks a chance to share their viewpoint on that. So as a reminder for everyone, in a few days you will see an email come from the PTA with a link to this broadcast that we urge you to share with your neighbors, communities, fellow PTA members, wherever you are. And there'll be also some useful links for additional information. Even at the American Cleaning Institute, we have a resource, our Healthy Schools, Healthy People program, where we share a lot of good information for school communities, and you can find that at cleaninginstitute.org/school health. Okay, why don't we go ahead and take away the polling there. Thank you for everyone for sharing your viewpoints, and we encourage you to again share these resources as you're able in the days and weeks ahead. We want to thank Liz Clark with the National Association of School Nurses, Jim Arbogast with Gojo Industries, and we here at American Cleaning Institute really want to thank the National PTA for this opportunity to have a wonderful, meaningful conversation. It's about health, it's about safety, which is paramount for all of us. So with that, thanks to everyone for participating today, for viewing, and we look forward to other opportunities in the future to share with the PTA communities great information on cleaning, hygiene, and health. So I'm Brian Sansoni with ACI. Thanks very much. Please stay healthy and safe.
Thanks so much, Brian, Liz, Jim. We appreciate your time today to answer all of our questions and help us gain a better understanding of hand hygiene. For those of you who may joined us late, this recording will be available on the PTA website under Learning Labs. We'll also be disseminating it through our YouTube channel. If you have any direct questions or comments, please feel free to email me. My name is Amaya Stecker. My email is astecker, STECKER, @pta.org. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a nice day, and thank you for all that you do for PTA.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.